Good morning, George. I'm so happy to have you here today to talk with me, George Manalo-LaClair from Nourish, California. We've worked together in the past and for so long, but it would be great if you could tell folks a little bit about Nourish, California and the work that you do.
Sure. Nourish California is a new name for us. We were for almost 3 decades California food policy advocates. So we've had a recent name change, but our mission is the same. We have been working to increase low-income California's access to nutritious and affordable food for all of that time. I would say that we're known for our policy advocacy, our work to remove barriers between food and people, and known for our work around school meals. We actually led the way in sort of rebranding the food stamp program to be CalFresh California. And so we really have used our power as advocates, our voices, to affect policy change, to increase access to healthy food, accessible food for the entire state of California.
Yeah, that's amazing. Such wonderful and such important work during this time, particularly during the pandemic. And I know you guys are working so hard to make sure that everyone had access to the pandemic EBT. And it's been, just quite a remarkable year in so many ways. And having finished just coming off the election, which was a very long journey for the country and for our state. What was your reaction? How do you think it will affect children going forward, the results of the election?
I think the election brings some, I would say hope, but hope is something that is a bit of a privilege. But I would say new opportunities. We've been spending a lot of time listening to communities since the election. We've been doing some surveys and some focus groups and trying to get a sense of how families are doing with the COVID crisis, and then what are those policy opportunities that emerge as we come out of COVID. I mean, we will eventually come out of COVID, and what are some of those possible opportunities? And I'd say with the Biden administration, I think we see some opportunities to push back on some of the attacks on food programs and on people that we've seen over the last 4 years. There have been a number of federal proposals to reduce access to CalFresh, or our SNAP program, our food stamp program here, and the hope would be that we can stop those from ever becoming a reality for folks here in California. But I'd also say that, as we've been listening and learning from communities, we've been particularly sensitive to what we're hearing from immigrant communities, and we were actually just did some focus groups in Spanish here in California, and what we're hearing is that people see that there's an opportunity to undo some of the messaging around immigrants, and particularly when it comes to public assistance. And we are hearing from folks that families who needed food, that they did not apply because of fears, and that the messaging from the previous administration definitely affected their ability to provide for their families. So a new administration, I think, can undo some of that, can put us back on track. And then I'll say, separate from a federal administration, our organization is really committed to this idea of food for all, regardless of immigration status. So we'll be looking, at least in the state legislature in the coming months, to advance that vision and to turn things around, hopefully when it comes to our food policies for immigrants.
Yeah, that is so critical. I love that you guys are working on food for all. And I think, it's always been an issue for Americans. So it's such a sort of quiet issue. I think that people are afraid, even in the suburbs, to talk about hunger and the lack of access to food and healthy food. And as we are seeing really on the nightly news, every week, every day, these long food bank lines, stretching miles and miles, and, it's so concerning. And so this work is just so critical. what do you think is going to be most important on behalf of children going forward in your work, and what do you think we need to do? I think the messaging, what you mentioned, is really important for why folks may not be signing up for benefits, but yet are in the food bank line, right? And so, what do you see as the most important for your work going forward, and how can we all help?
Yeah, I'd say we're looking to apply the lessons that we learned in the COVID crisis to policy going forward. But we're also remembering how things were even prior to COVID in terms of the struggles that households were facing in being able to afford enough food. So I would say, you mentioned the lines, at food banks, and that there's definitely an increased number of households struggling here in California. There's lots of data beyond the visuals of the food lines. We're also seeing within those struggles, different populations experiencing even greater struggles. And so as we unpack those struggles and look at, the sort of depths of hunger, we also have seen that some of the solutions were very effective and well received, the solutions that came out during this crisis. And you mentioned pandemic EBT a few moments ago, and that is something that I would say is a policy success and shows us that hunger is a problem that can be solved. That program delivered almost $1.4 billion in food help in California in just a few short months. And so looking at that and seeing how government can respond effectively and efficiently, we want to take some actions to build upon those successes. So we can use that idea of pandemic EBT and perhaps extend benefits for other times when school is out beyond the pandemic. So summer EBT, so when school is out, that kids are able to receive assistance so that they're getting some help when those meals that they normally get at school are not being served. I would also say another positive response has been how a number of schools have sort of stepped up to continue meal service even while schools are closed or in a hybrid model, and they're serving all kids for free right now. So they're providing meals universally to all students, and that is something that we probably should have been doing a long time ago.
Exactly.
And so I think what we'd like to see is that vision of universal meal access continue long after the pandemic, and we'll look for action in Sacramento to see how we can continue to move in that direction. We've had some policy success. A couple years ago, we had legislation that required schools with a high percentage of low-income kids, they must serve all kids for free. We can build upon that and continue to grow the number of schools that are hunger-free, that are serving all kids on campus. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to share. Thank you for your work and your team and your dedication and your commitment. We're so grateful to be partners with you in this work and for you all to continue to be shedding a light on this issue, and just so grateful. So thank you for spending time with me today.
You're welcome. Thanks.